The NBA trade deadline has come and gone. The Phoenix Suns make a move on the margin, sending Yusuf Nurkic to Charlotte. We bring in Tim Legler of the All NBA podcast and ESPN to break it all down. Legs, were you surprised at how little the Phoenix Suns did before the deadline?
Yeah, honestly, I was. But at the same time, I mean, I wasn't, when you heard the rumors about Durant there for a couple of days, and I didn't think that made any sense to me whatsoever, unless he had initiated it, and it didn't sound like he did. So if he didn't initiate it, in which case now you got this star player that's unhappy. He's at the end of his career. Like, that's not a good situation if you don't trade him. If that didn't happen, I'm like, why would you trade Kevin Durant? So that didn't happen. But just looking at their team, and of course I was there last night calling that game, and it was, first half they played great, up 2 at halftime, and then about 16, 17 minutes later, they're down like 35 coming out of the locker room. It was incredible the way Oklahoma City turned the heat up in that game and exposed Phoenix for some of their issues. But of course, Durant's not playing. You can't take too much out of it. But now here they are. They won 8 out of 10, and now they've lost 4 out of 5. Including back-to-back games against Portland. So you're looking at the Suns right now, and am I surprised? Yeah, because they've got this talent at the top of their roster, but something's not clicking. And maybe the organization looked at it and said, you know what? It's not even about a personnel thing. It's about just gelling and playing harder and tougher and competing more. And I don't know that adding marginal personnel, rotational guys is going to matter. Once Bradley Beal basically made it clear he wasn't going to waive his no trade, you're not trading Booker. And I think would it not have been prudent to trade Kevin Durant either. So I guess you're kind of stuck. The question is, can they figure out a way to have a more cohesive mentality going forward? That's the problem. Nurkic, he wasn't happy, so that's not good to have a guy around like that, but he's not causing this. So, they've lost 4 out of 5 games. They're giving up a ton of points. They've got to be tougher. They've got to play harder, play better together, and be more into it and be more competitive in general. And that's what we're going to have to wait and see over the last 25 games or so.
Well, I'm a mere talking head here, Legs, but you've been inside an NBA locker room. When you look at this and some of the issues that they've had, is there really a way that this team can look at each other and find whatever it is they've been missing? Or is this just you ride it out the rest of the way and then you try to figure out how to pick up the pieces in the offseason?
I think that's what it is. Look, the West is tough and teams got tougher. I'm talking about just your competitive, your schedule competitively every night. It's hard in the West, man. So they're going to be wildly inconsistent. That's what's going to happen. They have enough offense that some nights when it clicks, and they are less reliant on the dribble, more reliant on the pass, they can be a very tough team to guard, and they're going to put up numbers. They're going to win some games. But their defense, their lack of rebounding, which is a problem for them, particularly when sometimes I think their best lineup is to play small offensively. They're really susceptible to the offensive glass. They've got fatal flaws that surface. So that's what the ride's going to be. And then you're going to end up, hopefully for them, you end up in a playoff series at some point, and you got Kevin Durant, Devin Booker on your team. And that gives you a chance in a series like that. But ultimately, the stuff that teams hang their hat on every night that win in this league, they don't do those things at a high level.
Your ESPN colleague, Ramona Shelburne, said that the locker room is, quote unquote, toxic there. In your experience, were you ever in a locker room like that? And are those things that are just irreparable once you get to a situation like that? Or can players kind of work that kind of side of things out?
I've been I was on 10 years in the league. I was on a couple of situations exactly like you're describing, and you're not going to get that thing back on the tracks.
Yeah.
And I didn't read her piece. I was flying for like 4 hours today when a lot of the stuff came out, and I haven't read it. I do know about it. I saw the headline. I just didn't get a chance to read the article. Yeah. So I don't know exactly how specific she gets and what she's alluding to. And I was there last night, so I was really observing the team. And I'm big on watching body language on the bench and like all that stuff. I'm always watching that stuff when I'm calling a game. If it is toxic to the level that she has indicated, you're typically not getting that back on the rails until you make a major move. And because look, You know what causes toxicity? It's never role players, right? If there's toxicity in your locker room, it's typically has something to do with the stars and the coach. A lot of times, one of those or both or whatever it may be. The air's heavy. It airs heavy. It's not fun. And much as it's a business and guys are making a ton of money, end of the day, it is a game that when it's fun, you can do great things. Nobody's having more fun than the Thunder. And it shows. It shows, man. And they got one superstar. They got one. And then some really, really nice next tier players and some role players to fill it out and a very good coach. But they love each other. They play for each other as much as for themselves. And it's a hard thing to find in the NBA. And if you don't have it, typically, you can work around all the role players all you want to, man. It's usually something at the top of the food chain that's got to change. So if that is true, and I'm not saying it is because I don't know, Ramona did her reporting, so she has to base that on whatever she knows. If it is true, that's going to be a tough thing to recover from.
You bring up coaching. You obviously watch these games closely. Is there anything in the X's and O's that you're seeing that might point some of this towards Coach Mike Budenholzer, or is there anything that leads you to believe that just kind of the play calling, the rotations, those kind of things may be part of what's going on here?
I mean, I didn't see a whole lot when I've been watching them or the game the other night. They, it's little things like that I would have done differently. Like they're up 2 at halftime against OKC without Durant. Bradley Beal was the best player on the court in the first half, and he's coming off the bench. I get it, but I'm thinking to myself, maybe at the moment, I even said it to my broadcast partner. I don't know. I might start Beal the second half because he was he was playing so well, and you know what Oklahoma City was about to do coming out of that locker room because that's their identity. They're the best defensive team in the league by a mile, and you know they're going to pick it up. So, and he got up to go check in 3.5 minutes into the third quarter, way earlier than he would have, but it was already 14. They were already down 14 points. Like that's how fast Oklahoma City jumped on them. But I mean, I'm not going to sit there and crucify Mike Budenholzer for that. He's sticking to like their pattern of what they've been doing. They played a great first half offensively, great ball movement, great spacing, great decision making. All of that stuff is reflective of your coach. I know Mike Budenholzer can coach. I know he can. He didn't forget how to coach. He's a champion coach in this league. But right now, there's something about their team that and it's just sort of like a blah. You know what I mean? It's like a blah. You watch them and you're just kind of like uninspired by what you're watching. The shot making can be great some nights and they'll win some games, but there's not a cultural identity about the way they're going to play.
All right, let's fast forward 3 months. Matt Ishbia calls you up, says, here's a boatload of money to fix my roster. What would you do to try to fix this? Other than take that money real quick, what would be the basketball moves you make to try to fix this thing?
Man, oh man, oh man. That's a good one. I think for them, for whatever reason, the 3 stars offensively are not a good formula for them. But again, Bradley Beal, as he has said, holds the cards. Right? He's got the no trade, which, by the way, I don't know how any team gives any player a no trade clause. I just don't understand any team giving up that level of power. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't care who you are. It's just they're paying you all that money. The team should retain the rights to do what they need to do from a business standpoint, because you see what can happen in this situation. Because Booker and Durant together in the games they have played together win 67% of the time. Now that would put you. That's like top 5, top 6 in the league right now in terms of winning percentage. So there's something there that works with those two. And I thought bringing in Tyus Jones would help because, I'd be like set the table. I liked the addition of Plumlee. I liked Ryan Dunn. None of it's worked out. Honestly, if I was given that scenario that you said, I would probably try to figure out something with Bradley Beal. That'd be the first thing I would do. And I would try to make my team much more athletic, much tougher, much more hard-nosed, and built it around these 2 scorers. And obviously, you always got to have some shooting around them. But when you look at teams like Memphis, when you look at teams like Houston, Oklahoma City, they've got tough dudes that really commit to the defensive end of the floor. And I don't see a whole lot of that with the Phoenix Suns.
Before we let you go, I got to ask, do you have any good trade deadline stories from your time in the league?
Mine, I got a good trade story, but it's not a deadline story. I got traded one time in my career. It was in the summertime. And I had played 4 years in Washington, and I found out about the trade on a cruise with the season ticket holders.
Oh,
and
jeez.
and I wasn't informed ahead of time. So we sailed out. I mean, I did a basketball clinic on that ship. I was hosting Q&As. I spent all this time with the fans, and actually was told by a woman, probably in her 70s, at the elevator on the cruise ship, so sorry, you were my favorite player. And I'm like, I didn't die. What are you talking about? She's like, oh, maybe you don't know. And I'm like, what do you know? She literally said she was in her cabin and saw it on ESPN. Uh, and
Jeez.
that's how I found out I was traded. I didn't even find out from the team. So
How
it
much
could be,
longer was left in the cruise?
well, here's the rest of the story then. So I had my wife at the time, my first wife, and my first child. My daughter was like 2. We were about to sail back from Bermuda to New York. And I had 2 more days of events that I was supposed to host. And I went off the ship because it's like pre-cell phone stuff. Went off the ship, got a phone, called the team, found out it was confirmed, and then I basically said, "Well, I'm getting off the ship. I'm not going to sail back for 2 days and do these events for you when you just traded me in this way." And that's what we did. And I was standing there literally trying to figure out, well, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done, because now I got to figure out how to get home from Bermuda. And here it goes. And they're like, oh, I swear, it's surreal. There's people hanging over the railing, waving to me, saying goodbye, like fans. I'm like, hey, see, that was pretty much how my time in Washington came to an end. So when people use the expression, it's a business, I found out hard that day.
Jeez. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That is probably the most unique one I've heard in, in any player, former player I've talked with. Tim, thank you so much. I know how crazy your schedule is. Wishing you the best of luck the rest of the way, and hope to talk to you soon.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you.